Hey there, hunters, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. And geez, I haven't actually made a Monster Hunter video in a while. Anyway, today I want to talk to you about the current happenings in the Monster Hunter franchise, the whole universe thing, what's going on, where we're at with the games, and all that jazz. Because we're kind of in a great spot to sink a few hundred hours into some of the older Monster Hunter titles, and I want to discuss kind of why and how to do that. So bear with me for a little bit while I chat about my favorite IP, please, and let's just dive right into this. Okay, so let's start by saying that Sunbreak, the most current actual Monster Hunter game, is done. It's over, all the title updates are out, the game can finally be put to rest. Obviously, I wasn't the biggest fan of Rise and Sunbreak, so I'm glad it's finally over. Of course, if you enjoyed Sunbreak, all the power to you, there's lots to be had. It's just a little too frontier and anime for me. Too many particle effects, too much going on, it's just not for me. But the point is that Sunbreak is over, and now everyone is looking forward to the next Monster Hunter game, 6th Gen Monster Hunter, Monster Hunter 6, Monster Hunter World 2, whatever you want to call it. The 20th anniversary of Monster Hunter is coming up here in 2024, and of course there's going to be big announcements for Monster Hunter relatively soonish. And of course, we've had some sort of Monster game released pretty much every single year since 2004, so obviously something's on the horizon. But what and when? So I know Monster Hunter Now just launched to surprising acclaim actually. I'm curious how long that's going to last, but everyone I talked to seemed to actually enjoy the phone gameplay for Monster Hunter Now. And while it is a spin-off game, I do expect Monster Hunter Now to get some development to support just to keep the game in the news cycle, alongside the other unannounced Monster Hunter and Tencent mobile game, which is probably going to get revealed before Monster Hunter 6 does, since that had already been sort of announced, we just don't know what it is yet. I know a lot of people forgot about it. This is not the Monster Hunter Now. This is a different phone game. And again, this is all based upon my own speculation, but I do feel like these two mobile Monster Hunter titles are going to hold down the fort for the time being. And while I fully expect a Monster Hunter 6 reveal early next year, I don't actually think we're going to see a release until fall of 2024, maybe early 2025. Because there's no way Monster Hunter 6 is going to be revealed and then released in less than 6 months after the initial announcement. So if it is announced early in 2024, again, probably won't see it till the end of 2024, maybe even 2025. I also believe this to be the case because Dragon's Dogma 2 is due to be released probably next year as well. And while it's not a competing franchise to Monster Hunter, I don't see why Capcom released these two giant titles so close to each other because there's definitely some overlap in the player base. And since Dragon's Dogma 2 is deep into its, press release cycle before its inevitable launch date teaser, I fully expect this to come out before Monster Hunter 6. And there should be a few months gap between those quarterly sales reports, so these two aren't going to release together. So what I'm trying to get at is that I don't expect Monster Hunter 6 to be out anytime soon. I know people are clamoring for another dose of Monster Hunter, but it's quite a ways out. But fear not, for the point of this video I wanted to make is that this is a perfect opportunity to go back and play other Monster Hunter titles and get yourself more familiar with the series, especially if you started with 5th Gen and World or Rise, which most of the player base has. And if you're new to the series, you're probably thinking, why would I go back and play the older titles? Well, again, if you haven't been around Monster Hunter social spaces, you probably don't know, but Monster Hunter as a series has gameplay that holds up extremely well throughout the decades it's been out, except in 1st Gen. That's poo. But unlike a lot of other video games that are, 8 to 15 years old, Monster Hunter is actually not just nostalgia bait, and the core gameplay is actually not changed a whole lot over the years. And so for the most part, the older titles feel just as good as the modern ones. Pretty much every other generation of Monster Hunter titles is still fantastic, and all of them have some sort of unique features and mechanics exclusive to their games. So there's always something new to experience, be it weapon mechanics, maps, monsters, movement options, you name it. If you've enjoyed Iceborne or Sunbreak and have that itch for more hunting, there's plenty to be had, and I highly recommend going back to the older titles. So I want to start going back and talking about each of the older games, where and how you can play them, and what is unique to each of these. Just to try and hope to whet your palate a little bit to maybe give you some incentive to go back and play some of the older titles if you haven't yet. And if you have, maybe reignite that spark to go back and play them again. So I'm going to start by going back to the previous 5th Gen game, Monster Hunter World Iceborne, which actually has a larger active player base than Sunbreak still, and there's good reason for that. Iceborne's main feature, as controversial as it is the Clutch Claw, which allows the players to climb onto monsters, redirect them, push them into walls, and tenderize sections of monsters, making them take more damage from subsequent attacks. While Iceborne had a rather rocky reception through its initial life cycle, with the introduction of its Clutch Claw, it did get ironed out in the final 2 updates of the game, which actually left it in a pretty dang good state. Building on Monster Hunter World's base game experience, which is a vastly new take on the exploration, map traversal, and environmental engagement all on its own, Iceborne offers a unique experience in just about every aspect of Monster Hunter. Iceborne also gets to boast some of the best fights the franchise has ever seen, such as the entirely reworked Black Dragons in Fatalis and Elatrion, as well as the siege monsters, Safi Jiva and Kulve Taroth, and of course amongst other great hunts such as like Teostra, Ruiner Nergigante, Volgana, Rajang, Raging Brachydios, Stygian Zinogre, etc. I could go on, there's a lot of good fights here. And pretty much all the returning monsters that weren't new to World did get reworked for World, and so for the most part they feel entirely fresh compared to their forms just a few years prior. There's just a lot of quality content here, and the game just keeps on giving thanks to its fairly active and strong modding scene. Two big mods for Iceborne you can also try are the ICE Mod, which is the Iceborne Community Edition, which rebalances the game around having no Clutch Claw. This offers a brand new way to engage with Iceborne and relearn fights with all the stops and goes that the claggers and tenderizing cause. Highly recommended. There's also the Resurgence project, which is a fairly active and still adding new monsters and maps back into the game, such as Crimson Fatalis and White Fatalis in Zinogre. Monster Hunter World modding has gotten pretty advanced, and if you want a fresh take on World, there's plenty of options for you to enjoy. World can still be downloaded and played online via Steam, as well as past and current gen Xbox and PlayStation consoles, no Nintendo, though I do not recommend playing on like a PS4 or Xbox whatever, if you can just avoid it. I would definitely start here if Rise was your first Monster Hunter title, as World is still very new player friendly and has tons of active users, and retains all the quality of life experiences that some of the older titles perhaps don't offer. Next, we're going to go back one more generation and step into Monster Hunter Generations, Gen Ultimate specifically. No doubt you can see quite the difference in appearance going back from World to GU. That's because Gen and GU were initially developed for the 3DS, which was a pretty dated piece of hardware even when it was new. And it's a handheld console, where Monster Hunter traditionally resided on. It's only recent that they actually made their jump over here to the mainland consoles and the PC. Now GU is a whole new beast. It offers tons of unique content in forms of hunting styles that allow the players to change your weapons movesets, as well as hunter arts, which are basically super moves that you can customize. Generations Ultimate also boasts an absurd amount of hunts for such a small size game. It's 93 large monsters, pretty much about the same as Iceborne, and this tiny little package, it's like 16 gigs or something. Now GU's roster is also incredibly diverse with monsters from all previous generations, hence kind of the title, it's all about everything coming together. And this includes things like Leviathans, Neopterans, bugs, Elder Dragons, and plenty of new monsters as well as variants of older monsters. I think that's the claim to fame here for Generations, is that there's just an absurd amount of stuff in the game. That, paired with the gameplay customization of your weapons, styles, and arts, lets the players play Generations in an equally impressive amount of ways. While Generations Ultimate may look dated, 4th gen and older Monster Hunter titles still retain the crisp combat the franchise is known for. While the online player base isn't quite as robust as World and Sunbreak, being that it's locked to the Switch, or emulated on the PC, you can still find players to partake in GU hunting in most of the Monster Hunter online communities, as it is still played pretty much on the regular. Also, Gen and GU were the only games to introduce the Prowler as a playable weapon, but it's more of a character swap. You can do any hunt as a Palico, with your Palico buddies as well, to get a new perspective on the hunts, quite literally. I personally love Prowler mode, but they are notably awful in GU. Still, cool experience. And because this is a pretty lightweight title, file size and such, it runs extremely well in emulators for the Steam Deck, which is becoming the premier Monster Hunter console these days. While of course you can still play it on the Switch, how can you pass up 60 frames and the ability to not use a Switch controller? Anyway, GU is fantastic, and it offers the players a very flashy experience, more akin to Rise if that appeals to you. But even if not, GU has such a broad range of options that something's going to appeal to everyone. Play some GU if you can, it's worth it. Moving back, we're going to talk about Rajang Hunter 4 Ultimate, the Monster Hunter game that a lot of people will claim is the best Monster Hunter experience, and I'm actually not going to disagree with that. 4th gen introduced quite a few systems and mechanics, which include both the Charge Blade and the Insect Glaive weapons, which were both peaks here on 4U in terms of their gameplay and performance. It's just perfect. 4U also has item loadouts, which is about as far back as you can go and still have those. WiiU also introduced verticality to Monster Hunter in the form of ledges, ramps, slopes, jumping, and mounting. So many of the new maps for this game boast these features for the first time ever, which ruined all the maps for the foreseeable future. I'm sorry. While I feel like 4U has some of the worst maps in the entire franchise, the core gameplay is definitely tops. Weapons have some serious impact here in 4U. Screen shake, hit lag, blood spurts on soft spots, the sound, it's all very meaty and helps deliver that feeling of just pure strength and power that your hunter has. Very unga bunga game. 4U, more than any Monster Hunter game, just feels good. Like compared to like Sunbreak and stuff, which has no hit lag, no discernible unique sounds, it's all muddled and blends together, it feels so homogenized and hollow. And no one's gonna deny how good it feels to play 4U. It's just built differently, and I really can't hammer in that point enough. Just pick it up, you'll see. 4U also has one of the more unique systems, love it or hate it, with the Apex Monster as their endgame grinding system, alongside their guild quests, which actually play a lot like anomaly quests in Sunbreak, to be honest. There's a near endless amount of infinite farming you can do in 4U for chase items that won't ever drop, but it's there if you actually want to partake. 4U also has the best feature seen in any Monster Hunter game ever, which is the WiiU. This guy here will trade materials obtained from monsters in 4U for those obtained in other regions, i.e. older games. So you can get materials, armor, and weapons from monsters that aren't even in 4U, like Nargacuga and Cedius, and Lagiacrus, which is a goddamn amazing thing, and why hasn't this been a returning feature? Now, 4U was released on the 3DS, and while the game is quite old at this point, there is still a small active player base which you can still hunt online with. For now, as Nintendo also just announced that the 3DS and Wii U online connectivity is going to be lost early next year. So if you want to get in on that, now's your last chance. Crazy to think about it though, this is Nintendo's last hardware generation. It would be like if PS4s and Xbox whatevers could no longer go online already. People would riot. Why does Nintendo get the pass? Anyway, despite Nintendo killing online functionality of their consoles, they're also single-handedly propping up the emulator scene, and that has been bustling, as you can still enjoy the online experiences of these games on the PC with the Citra emulator as well as Cemu, which also comes with added bonuses of having better graphics, better frame rate, and being able to use actual controllers. So you can still enjoy the peak Monster Hunter content on the peak platform, with a nice facelift as well. On the same 3DS hardware, we also have 3 Ultimate, which is, I guess, also available on Wii U if you have one of those still. 3rd generation Monster Hunter introduced the Switch Axe weapon, as well as the also infamous underwater combat. This allowed hunters to chase monsters in the oceans or back onto land to continue their fight in 2 different environments, with really having 2 different movesets for these monsters. 3U is also home to a lot of fan favorite monsters such as Lagiacrus, Gobolt, Giganox, Dire Moralis, and Brachydios. While underwater combat was divisive, a lot of players either hated it and some of them loved it, depending on their weapon of course, it was certainly a bit clunky. Navigating a 3D space with the 3DS controls and visuals was not easy, and depth perception became an issue where it previously hadn't. I personally love underwater combat, as I'm currently going through 3U for the first time, and I would love to see it return in the future with some polish of course. It could be done. And being able to just jump into the water really helps open up the maps and make the environments feel the most natural, as opposed to having, invisible walls being in front of every bit of water that's more than knee deep. 3rd generation definitely has the best maps in the franchise as well. Even visually, they look better than some of the maps of Sunbreak, which despite being almost 10 years older and newer, like the old maps look pretty good. As I said, I recently got back to play 3U, and I'm playing on the PC through emulation on Citra because we have fan-made mods here to boost the resolution and make these old handheld games look about as good as GU does on the Switch, which is just nice to see, to be honest. While 3U can be played online through the Wii U, 3DS version of the game could only be played through local or through the Wii U. Not that that matters too much now, as we previously covered, those online features are going to be dead next year. Fortunately, 3U can still be experienced online through not just emulators like 4U and GU, but with the Wii U, you can spoof the Nintendo ID system to allow players to bypass the Nintendo servers and connect to third-party servers instead. And this should allow modders to provide their own servers in the future. I wish I could talk more about certain fights and combat mechanics in 3U, but I don't have a whole lot of experience here. But I am going to be streaming 3U, so if you want to check it out, by all means, stop on by and say hi. Anyway, speaking of providing servers, if we step back in time a little bit more, we're going to go into second gen Monster Hunter with Frontier, which recently closed, but it is still alive and well through private servers. The second generation Monster Hunter Online game is another absurdly nutty and wild way to experience Monster Hunter if you have not played it before. Frontier, while not my cup of tea, is a Monster Hunter game that has a decade of updates, patches, monsters, items, systems, quality of life improvements all slapped onto it. Quite a few monsters, armor skills, features, and other things that you see in the newer titles of Monster Hunter are actually from Frontier. So the ideas and the gameplay is still there and relevant despite being from a second gen based game. But this is entirely a different experience, trust me. Frontier has all sorts of wild things like pets, armor sets condensed into a decoration, 8,000 raw, monsters that AoE nuke the entire screen, unique weapons in tonfas and magnet spikes, and just some crazy visuals. If you enjoy Sunbreak and how wacky and anime it is, Frontier is right up your alley, trust me. It is slow to start because, it's kind of modeled like an MMO, but you can easily dump thousands of hours into playing through all of Frontier's content. And you can easily Google how to set up or join a private server for Frontier. There is some Reddits and Discords specifically for that. I don't have any experience with Frontier myself, so I don't want to voice any criticisms or vouch for anything the game has to offer, but that's because I also just know how huge this game is, and I am far too afraid to dip my big toe into this ocean of gameplay. So feel free to ask someone else like Sarah Symmetry or Cephalrend who are way more in tune with this game than I am. Now, a lot of hunters have returned to Frontier, or at least started it for the first time thanks to the efforts of the private server community, and if I can help by spreading the word of their hard work and get some more members in there, then I'm happy to do that. So feel free to check the description of this video for a link to a Frontier private server Discord, which will help you get set up. I'm also going to include links to the Discord for the Monster Hunter Classic HD project, which has all the graphic mods for all the old Monster Hunter games and such. Alright, continuing to move back, in the same generation as Frontier, we have Freedom Unite, the second gen G-Rank game, which is also incredibly highly praised. Everyone says this is where Monster Hunter started. While I have not experienced Freedom Unite at all, literally everyone tells me I need to play it at some point, so that's probably what I'm going to do after I finish WiiU. Now, Freedom Unite originally released back in the PSP in 2009 or something. It also got re-released on the iPhone in 2013. It's actually a pretty good port too. A lot of people says it doesn't play terribly, so that's surprising. And so there are some actual modern ways to play this title, though it's probably just easier to run this on a PSP emulator rather than a phone. I can't talk much about Freedom Unite because I haven't actually played it, but from everything I've seen, it's probably got the most broken and awful hitboxes in the entire series. Like, except for the first game probably. But all the memes about like Plesioth hip check, they come from here. And pretty much every attack in this game seems to have hugely inaccurate and lingering hitboxes. But yeah, some people swear by this game, I guess. Freedom Unite also brought in some fan favorites like Nargacuga and Uconlos, as well as the Lava Seoth and Hypnocockatrice from Frontier, and introduced the Palico companions to the series. I'm curious to see how bad it really is, because it doesn't really look appealing to me, but I'm gonna trust some people's words on it. And I'm just gonna say, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried, because gunning in the older generations gets really rough with age. But Freedom Unite is there. It's an option for anyone who's interested. It's definitely one of those badge of honor games. People say like you should play it. If you're a Monster Hunter fan, just play it. Get through Freedom Unite. Now, those are the titles I wanted to talk about and showcase a little bit because there's so much Monster Hunter to play, and we have seemingly a lot of time to play them. And I wanted to try and coax some players into playing these titles because a lot of the times I try to recruit others and I hear the response of, oh, I'll wait for a remaster or a port, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. While I would love to see a port of like 3U or 4U onto a PC or a Switch or whatever, I think that's too much effort to justify. Because think about it, if they were going to do just like a straight port with no changes, that's a ROM, and they would have done that already, that's easy. But Capcom has been kind of on a roll lately of doing remasters for all their older titles, and they're going great. But Monster Hunter doesn't really do well with that. If they were to remaster or remake like 4U, beef up the graphics, add some quality of life improvements, remake the maps to be seamless, and then add some new monsters, and oh wait, that's just literally any new Monster Hunter game. So like, if they were going to do a port of a game, they would have. And if they were going to remake a game, well, they're already working on new Monster Hunter games, so that's basically the same thing. I just don't see Capcom bringing back the older titles. But again, I hope I'm wrong, because I would love to have 3U and 4U with an active player base again. So all that being said, the whole point I was trying to make with this now too long video is that we probably have a lot of time between Sunbreak and Monster Hunter 6. And rather than play broken AAA titles like Star Citizen and Cyberpunk and God, is anything else even out? Like, I guess you can play Baldur's Gate and Armored Core. But anyway, play an older Monster Hunter title. They're great, they hold up, there's plenty of players around for all of them, and it's a great way to experience new monsters, weapons, styles, maps, and just everything in other ways you haven't before. Sure, some of the older games are slower to start and a little clunkier in their menuing and gathering and whatever, but man up, deal with it, cheat in your potions, go hunting. But that's going to be all for me. Thanks, and good luck out there, hunters.